Hi, and thank you for joining us for this episode of The State of Leadership Simple and Beyond. That is Robert Hilliard. I am Whitnie Wiley, and we are here on Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific, talking all things leadership. And today we are talking about the book Everything is Figureoutable by Marie Forleo. Everything is figureoutable. And so it's interesting that this is, I wouldn't have probably said, Robert, when I think about this, I would not have probably said it the way that Marie says it, or ultimately, as she tells the story, the way what her mother said. But this is a philosophy that I wholly believe, and one that I think is not just applicable in our personal lives, but in leadership. And that's the way we're going to discuss this today. So we'll talk about the underlying philosophy of the book. Our goals with our book discussions is for you to read the book. So we're going to tell you everything that's in the book, right? And this is not a book review. It is giving you some insights about what the book is about and then encouraging you to read it. If you have already read it, we invite you to participate in the conversation. And even if you haven't read it, we invite you to participate in the conversation. Think about what the underlying philosophy is, which really is simply a mindset that says that, you could do it, right? And that if you take the time and you use some of the tools and strategies, that you can figure it out. And as a leader and as a member of a team, really that's what you're trying to do. So your opening thoughts on this?
Well, I just like the philosophy that the way she describes it is that it starts with your belief, and that really dictates the thoughts that you have, which dictates the emotions that you experience, and that, of course, goes into the action that you have, and that gives you the results that you're going to get. So if you're afraid about something, or you have a limiting belief about something, it's going to ultimately impact the results that you get. So I'm a big fan of that. It's a lot of it. I coach around that tons of times, so I'm a big fan of that.
Absolutely, right. And often, without having a name put to something, we find that we're actually doing a lot of the things, right? If you are someone who has a growth mindset, if you are someone who sets goals and takes actions to achieve things, moving through challenges, persevering, building resilience, right? These are things that you are naturally doing, and maybe you didn't have a name for it, right? Or a title, catchy title for it. I call it Figureoutable. But that's what you're doing, right? That's sort of what you're doing. And taking the time to read someone else's words on it, their experiences, and put it in, and actually put it in words that you can articulate, makes it a little easier for you, I think, to duplicate, right? Makes it duplicative, and it makes it possible for you to share what you're doing, maybe in ways that you hadn't been able to do previously.
Yeah, and I think one of the other aspects of this that we sometimes forget, you may have been doing it before you even read the book or even heard of it, but to have a framework that you could put into practice and use over and over again and make adjustments to, that's huge. And that's how I do a lot of my work. I have a lot of frameworks that I use. Sometimes they can be kind of prescriptive, but I like having a jumping off point.
Absolutely, right. And you take that and you build on it, which is what all the frameworks are, right? People take something, they test it out, you see what works, what doesn't work, you make some changes to it, and then you move that forward. Someone takes what you've done, they make some tweaks to it, right? That's how we do the things that we do. That's how you've learned to do just about everything you've ever done from the very beginning. So it's important thinking about it in that context. So again, the book isn't just a collection of inspiring words, it's a mindset shift. And you know, Robert, how I like mindset shifts. So
Yeah, absolutely.
in this case is crucial for leaders, um, because we're operating in a dynamic and often very unpredictable world. And it's about taking a look at the mountain of problems and saying, you know, I can climb that mountain. I can do this. It's about transforming how we think about challenges, not just as an individual, not just as a leader, but as a part of a team and part of an organization. And before we unpack this, I want to ask you, our listeners, have you ever faced a situation that felt utterly overwhelming? Right. And no doubt you have. You know, you felt like the problem was so big you didn't even know where to start. And I want you to keep that in mind as we're exploring this topic today. And so, with that, I want to sort of tap into a couple of different. I think I've got. I think the way I want to frame this conversation is that I've got three different things, or maybe four, maybe four different things, right? We're discussing the book. We're gonna look at this. I'll call it a mantra, right? Everything is figure outable. And if you can remind yourself of that as you step up to the plate to things, just say, you know, this is figure outable. I just have to take the time to move through a process to figure things out. And you laid out sort of a process for that already. And the mindset that comes along with this mantra is that ultimately you believe that any problem, no matter how big or how complex, that it can be solved, right? It has to start there. And what Marie does, Miss Forleo does, is she emphasizes that with creativity, perseverance, and a positive mindset, and not a positive mindset, sort of, you know, rainbows and unicorns, or it's all kittens and stuff, but a positive mindset that says that I can do this. Ultimately, you can navigate and overcome any obstacle. And I'll share a story or two from my former life that for me was a huge turning point, I think, in recognizing that no matter how insurmountable things, particularly in a work world, you know, in my personal life, I had learned to move through challenges because it was absolutely necessary. It was my life, right? And in work, it was easy, particularly if you've, you know, been following us here for a while. You know that I spend an appreciable amount of my time in my work life less than happy, and I often let that cloud how I was approaching things. And so I found myself at a particular point with a huge challenge that at the beginning, I think I didn't even realize how huge it was. And by breaking it down into manageable steps, right? And coming up with a strategy, it allowed me to not only navigate that challenge, but ultimately to like thrive through it and take so many lessons from that that have fueled me in my business and professional career, particularly as I left that life and launched my own business, um, and continue to move through things, including like really growing as a person and as an entrepreneur through the pandemic and into today. And so the book provides some actionable strategies, right, that you can use again to break down what seems to be insurmountable challenges into manageable steps. And there's a focus on empowering you, right, as a leader, me, to take control of our lives as we make decisions and pursue goals despite fear and uncertainties. And ultimately, it's taking those actions that help to propel us forward.
I think it's very interesting because as you were talking, and when you said you wanted the audience to think about something they thought was insurmountable, I started thinking about some of the challenges that I had. And one of the things that came up was when I went back to school, went back to grad school as an adult. And I remember how difficult that decision was. It was almost paralyzing because you're thinking, okay, I'm doing this thing, I have this job, but I know there's some other things I want to do in my career. And education is going to open those doors for me.
Mm-hmm.
You start, can I do it? Right? You start having those kind of, how am I going to do it? What kind of process am I going to put in place to allow me to? So all these things, but the end result, and there was a lot of fear around it. But the interesting thing is thinking about that situation now. I can't recall the nervousness. I can't feel it inside my body, which I know was there. Right.
Right.
It's very interesting. When you're on the other side of that, you have a different perspective. And a lot of times when it comes to our goals and trying to come up with something for our team or for ourselves as leaders, we get so caught up in the fear. And then when we achieve it, it's almost laughable.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. I was thinking about that. I can't recall that feeling in my body, that anxiety, that fear that I know I was experiencing at that time.
It's interesting that you say that because I hadn't thought about it in that context. And so and I'll go ahead and share the example, but the example from my life, the same thing. I know that there were feelings of fear, doubt. There are some other emotions that I experienced through that time that I can tap into a little more readily. But in as you say, in your body, right? The way I felt it then, I used to have dread on the mornings where I was going to have these like all day meetings. So here's the situation. So I was the lead lobbyist on groundwater issues for the organization that I worked for previously. And I don't know, 2014, 15, something like that. There had been a lot of talk about making some changes in our groundwater system, the way groundwater is managed in California. And up until that time, groundwater had not been managed in California. And so I'd been lobbying for, at that point, 14, 15 years, something like that. And groundwater has always been a contentious issue. And I remember having a member of the association that I worked for come to me at some point on a previous bill and say to me, Whitnie, groundwater is a God-given right. Right. And so I'm operating sort of with this philosophy that this is how our members feel about this issue. And so now we are faced with a situation where the members of the legislature want to come in and say the state should be managing something that individuals and individual water agencies, and my membership was comprised of water agencies, but individual landowners and these water agencies were like, not only no, but hell no. And how I was going to navigate this proposition, right? And when it was initially brought to me that not only were we going to, the association was going to take a position on this, but what leadership of the organization wanted was slightly different than what our members wanted. And so now I've got to navigate sort of, this world of what our members want and what leadership wants, and trying to figure out how to make this happen. And I can remember sort of sitting with myself, thinking through how am I strategically, how am I going to navigate this? And as I started putting together the plan, right, I was like, how am I going to figure this? How am I going to figure this out? And sort of having that, the mindset internally, I don't know how, but I know it is figure outable. I didn't use that term because I didn't know it then, but this is figure outable. And if I do the things that I have done in the past, it will lead me ultimately to a solution. Mm-hmm. And so, I started with the end in mind and worked my way backwards, basically, and how, what it's going to take to get there. And I started with a group of lawyers. Now, if you've ever worked with a lawyer, let alone a group,
I do.
let alone a group of lawyers, right? You could think of, how daunting this would be. And they all had their interests, their clients, what their clients wanted and needed in this process. And it was then that I would, and I've seen some memories on Facebook, right? So here's the thing, the memories on Facebook that would come up of that time and what I was feeling at that time, and like dreading going into the office, because that day I was going to spend like the entire day working with these lawyers, trying to figure out language, right? Language, an approach, a concept that would work for our 460 members. That's where we started, right? I'm taking care of our members. But once we got what we needed, we then had the opposition or people who had a different stakeholders that wanted something different than what we wanted. Mm-hmm. And so, I could just, it's like one of the biggest professional, I would say, achievements, accomplishments that I had in that world, for sure. And it started with a mindset that even though I didn't know how, that I knew there was an answer. And I think for me, and the approach that I took in lobbying, which is the approach I take in many things in life, is that it's not a kill or be killed, right? That's not the way I approach things. It's not kill or be killed. It's like there's an answer and there's a way to bring the desperate pieces of something, right? Stakeholders, perspectives, etc. There's a way to bring these together. And it's the same approach that I take in my own leadership and that I try to help my clients with as they are moving through whatever the different challenges there are. It's like, yeah, you could make this about I need to win. This is about me. Or you can say, oh, what's on the horizon and how can I bring different perspectives to the table, talk them through, and find a pathway for it, a solution and a pathway for it that takes care of what the majority of what it is people want and need in the process.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you started talking about a group of people, because it makes the situation more complex when you're trying to figure things out with other people. But as a leader, I think one of the things that you can do is share the mindset with your team so that they can understand that, we'll figure it out. We can figure this out together, especially if you're utilizing, like you've heard me say, the collective intelligence of the team, the collective IQ of the team. And you have a diverse team, which we've talked about on the show, people from different backgrounds, work-wise, age-wise, race, religion, whatever, however you want to throw that mix around. Those folks will bring different perspectives that are useful in uncovering your answer. And you're not going to get that if everything is homogenized, right? You're not going to get
Right.
that if you have people from the same school, from the same culture, or whatever. Once you start mixing things up, and this is, of course, that's not what today's program is about, but I want to throw that in there. You get different perspectives, and that's always very, very helpful when you're trying to figure something out. And you can use it for yourself. If you're trying to figure something out, go to different people that have different
People with
perspectives and get their opinions, ask them questions, get ideas from them, and then you can apply it to the problem that you're trying to figure out.
Absolutely. So what I did was sort of look at the concepts in the book, and was seriously sort of thought about some experiences that I have, and then do what I do, and sort of worked my way backwards to how has this shown up, right? How has this shown up? And I would say in the context of what we talk about here on the state of leadership, three things came to mind for me. It's like embodying and fostering the mindset, right? This overall philosophy about this, guiding teams to embrace the challenges, which starts with embracing a mindset, which you just talked about. And then something that I'm really huge on, which is every experience is a learning experience, right? And so that we have the ability to learn from every step, including our missteps, including our mistakes. And if we will do that, ultimately creating an environment, creating a culture that allows that, we get where we need to go. And in fact, everything does become figure outable. So in the first one, embodying and fostering the mindset, right, that starts with leading by example, right? That we have to demonstrate this mindset in actions and decisions. And it's not just that we say, oh, you should adopt a figure outable mindset. No, we have to lead with a figure outable mindset, right? We have to demonstrate that it's possible. We have to lead by example. And when we face the challenges head on with a positive and determined attitude, it sets a precedent for the team. It actually shows the team that we're walking our talk.
Absolutely. And it's something that sometimes we forget, that even when you think people aren't paying attention, they're paying attention. So you have to lead by example. And I love that. When I was preparing for today's show, I was looking at the things that went into the book. And the first thing, of course, is mindset. Then she talked about habits, and the habits, and you went over those, persistence, optimism, creativity, and really just taking those small incremental steps every day that are moving you towards your
Yeah.
goal. And then the last thing, and I wanted to get your opinion on this, were the actions. And we talked about those small incremental steps, but one of the actions that she was talking about are really how to deal with limiting beliefs. And I wanted to get your opinion on dealing with limiting beliefs, because I know as a coach, you have to deal with that and help clients navigate limiting beliefs. So what is your thoughts on how it's presented in the book?
I am in agreement, right? And I have my own sort of approaches to limiting beliefs and the strategies that I employ personally and that I encourage my clients to use. I don't dictate, of course, right? And it's like here are the options that are out here. Here's what works for me. And um, for me, I'm a logical person. And so this may not work for everyone. You can share what works for you. Um, but for me, and I call it objective evidence, the objective evidence, right? Which is looking at what I've done in the past, what has worked in the past, where the successes are, and bring those in. And when I have a thought of doubt or fear or whatever, I approach it in a very logical manner. And so there are a couple of things that I do on a daily basis. I'm all about affirmations, right? And having rituals and routines and things that prop me up or lift me up, empower me as a foundation and on a daily basis. And then when something sort of gets in the way and it becomes a hindrance, is to bring in those in the objective evidence showing that I've done hard things. I have survived hard things, right? And reminding myself of that, of the truth of the matter. And I say this to my clients, right? When you have thoughts in your head and you find yourself sort of listening to the thoughts in your head, don't counter the thoughts in your head in your head. Reply to the thoughts in your head out loud, right? So that you can hear yourself with the truth, right? Which can drown out the thoughts in your head. So
it's interesting. It's interesting. I agree with, I don't use all of that, but I've used parts of that, especially when I'm by myself and no one's going to look at me weird when I'm talking to myself.
Which is the other thing. We have to get beyond caring
Of course.
what other people think, if they think we're a little, off or whatever. And it's like, what's going so well in your life, right? People looking at you and you're like, well, so I'm like, I'm good with that. I'm good with it. So
That's funny. But yeah, I think it's good to have, and like I said, it's a framework, right? You have a framework, and it's interesting, and it's really important. I think when all of us think about limiting beliefs and how they affect us, we have a framework or some tools that are going to help us deal with those limiting beliefs. I'm big on challenging them, because a lot of times in myself and with clients, sometimes those limiting beliefs are not self-imposed. They come from other people.
True.
Things that you've been taught since you were a kid, and you don't know that if it's true or not, but it came from somebody you trusted, and they gave that to you because they were trying to protect you, or it's usually for a good reason. They have good reason for doing it, but those beliefs just are not true. And so challenging it to see if, hey, is it really true? And then where does it come from? Did you dream that up yourself, or did somebody else give it to you? How true is it really? And if it, is it, and I think how she puts it is it an assumption or is it fact?
Right.
Is it fact or is it assumption? And then, which is very similar to how the process I use. And then the last one is it helping or hindering? Is it helping you to move forward? But if it's helping you to move forward, then okay. But I've never heard a situation where somebody said, my limiting belief is helping me. I have yet to encounter that. They may think it is, but I go, okay, it's helping you. Well, where do you want to go? I want to go over there. Is it helping you get there? It's not. Okay. Is it helping you? No, it isn't.
And
So
usually it's trying to protect you,
yeah,
right? And which goes to your point about whether or not it's serving you. Is it moving you forward? Our thoughts are, especially those the ones that run towards the negative bias, are attempts to protect us, to defend us. And you're absolutely right. Asking the question, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it serving? All of that is important. And then asking the question. So maybe the question is, yes, it's serving, right? Because it's protecting me. Is there a better way?
mm-hmm.
Right? Is there a better way to get what these thoughts are trying to provide for you? Is there a better way, a more productive way, one that actually leads you forward, moves you forward, allows you to take action and move towards your goals or your vision or solving the problem, whatever it is, that if there's another way, then explore that rather than the one that is holding you back.
Right. And usually limiting beliefs, they encourage you to play small. So you're in this space, and you're playing in a place where it's, I don't want to use the term comfortable because it can be discomforting to be there, but it doesn't stretch you. It's not stretching you. And it may, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, we have to decide that we want to be stretched, though, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And for leaders in particular, and going back to sort of leading by example, if part of what you are doing, making with an assumption that you have embraced leadership as something beyond a title, right? Well, I'm making that assumption for you. You've decided that is not just about you having a title, right? But that is about you uplifting, empowering, and building a team that where everyone is able to bring their best selves so that you can solve the problems that are why you are a team in the first place. There's no point in being a team, right? You can just be a group of people if you want to sit around and, binge watch Netflix, right? There's an assumption that you're part of a team in an organization, solving problems of the organization solving problems of clients, customers, or constituents, right? That's why you exist. And therefore, you want everyone to bring the best of what they have to the table. And it's difficult to do that if you are in a place where individually or there's a collective limiting belief, right? And some of those are, we do this is the way we do what we do the way we've always done it, right? Or there's not a better way, or it doesn't matter what we do, whatever that thought is, a collective thought or on an individual basis. And so you've got to lead people out of that, right? And you do that by example. You're encouraging problem solving, right? But you've got to create an environment where that's okay. If you're telling people that they can be creative in their problem solving, but they get tamped down, right? And so then maybe it's not a limiting belief. Maybe it's an environmental truth, right? Going back to your point about asking about whether or not this is true, is it serving, etc.
I think you're absolutely correct. I think the other thing I want to throw in there is it's hard to do that when you're not even considering your leadership. I think a lot of people don't even consider their leadership. They consider their job.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is my job. But they don't think of it as a part of their job is actually leading. I think this is something that's only recently come to the, only recently are we really starting to hear people talking about leadership. How do you lead? I can tell you the number of times I've mentioned leadership to some of my clients, and they're not thinking about that. They're thinking about, this is the job I got to do. And I think that making that distinction, or bringing that to the forefront of their mind, rather, I should say it that way, would be very helpful. How am I leading? How is this a part of my job? How can leading better help me do my job better? And I don't think that many people think about that.
I agree with you. And taking one step back from that is, in order to lead better, I have to be better.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's, I think, ultimately sort of the bottom line of the book. And when it comes to mindset is that I can be better when I think better, when I trust myself better, right? When I look at how I'm thinking, how I'm moving, how I'm taking action or not taking action, and then being willing, going back to the point about growing, being willing to grow, get out of my comfort zone. And the more I am willing to do that, the more we as leaders are willing to do that, the better able we are to serve ultimately our teams, and then our teams serve the organizations that we are a part of.
Yeah, absolutely.
The second point was about sort of guiding teams and embracing the challenges, right? And again, this taps into this concept about creating space for risk taking, right? Where we are looking to build a culture where taking calculated risks, right? Not crazy, stupid risk, but calculated risk, and that failure is not frowned upon, right? But it's seen as an opportunity to learn. It's a learning opportunity. And until we give people the space and sort of the self-authority, self-efficacy to do that, they're not going to. If I feel like I'm going to be punished for offering up a solution that is, outside the bounds of what people have thought about before, I'm likely not to offer it up. Right. And so we have to create space for people to be able to share. Right. And you think about what's the first rule of brainstorming, right? Is that you're not judging. Right. You're not judging what people are offering up and what they're suggesting. But all too often, that's what we're doing. And then you can't be creative and innovative and be a real problem solver if you're like, I can only solve the problem in this box.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's another mindset thing, and another I don't want to say issue, but it's a challenge that many leaders have, is being creative and also allowing people to take risks. And with that, if you're going to put that out there, you have to have established trust. So
Yes.
People trust that they can make that error and not be penalized for it. And it's so funny because I know I've used the story, like I've said the story about a billion times in the show, about the leader that was doing the brainstorming. And every time we said something, he was, that won't work here. Within 5 minutes, no one was saying anything, because it was like, okay, well, I guess we're not brainstorming. We're trying to come up with the answer that you want. And we don't know what you want because we're not in your head. So no one said anything. And the leader was super frustrated and then stopped the meeting. And it's one of those weird things. And that goes back to, as a leader, as a manager, let's even make it more basic than that. If you're going to run a meeting or have some kind of process tool like brainstorming, you should know the ground rules for it, and not just say we're going to do something and then not know how to do it properly and frustrate everybody else who's working with you, who probably know how to do it. And they're not going to point that out to you because they're not the leader you are. So
Right.
It's one of those situations. So it's trust. It's having that environment that allows you to take those calculated risks, building a situation or allowing a situation where people can give you feedback as a manager. I would have loved to give that manager feedback, but they would not have been open to it because they showed me before that they
Right.
weren't open to feedback. So it was just one of those situations where we all just suffered through and then joked about during lunchtime. Uh, We weren't really joking. We were just kind of grousing about it. But it was they were framed as jokes, but they really weren't. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, they're funny. We were really just not liking the situation at all. But it always reminds me about that. And I remember sitting there going, wow, I wish he would have asked me to run the meeting just to facilitate that. He could have run the meeting. I could have facilitated that because that was something that I did, but he wanted to keep control. And that just led to a whole other host of things. So, and that's something else is you got to make sure your ego is not running the show. You have to be open. So there's a lot of things that go into this, and it all starts with mindset.
Absolutely. Right. And you're talking about feedback. It goes both ways. We did a show on feedback, right? So you can look through sort of the archives on that, and offering guidance, feedback, giving feedback, receiving feedback. You've got to create. It's about having a culture, creating an environment where people trust that they can do that, right? And they trust the feedback that they're given. This is about open communication and encouraging people to do that. I think it starts with you as the leader actually having respect for these concepts, right? If you don't have respect for a diverse range of perspectives, then it's a little difficult for you to hear feedback, for you to want to give feedback as anything other than a directive, and recognizing that when you give feedback, it's not you're giving someone the opportunity.
You said directive. I was going to say or punishment.
Or punishment.
Because sometimes the feedback is leading into punishment. You know, so it was just very interesting.
No, absolutely. And so if you're going to have teamwork, right, you need to define what that means for the team in terms of collaboration, communication, trust that's built, opportunities to weigh in. And if that's not a part of it, you're going to have a difficult time actually having team, right? Again, I don't know, did we do a show on teams, difference between teams and groups, and what it takes? Maybe we need to do something like that.
It's so weird when I think about that, because it's something that I think about and talk about a lot, that so much that I can't kind of figure out if we've done it on the show.
I remember in grad school having, doing, well, we did a lot of team courses and teamwork, and we're part of some not so great teams.
I'm laughing because I was just talking to somebody about one of my last experiences, and the course was called Leading Teams, right? And it was a great course. But when you had your project, there was always one person on the team. Everybody experiences it that just didn't care, because what they call free riders in leadership, circles, we call it, they're free riders. They know that whatever happens, they're going to get the same grade. So I remember the guy that was on my team said, I just want that piece of paper. he said the silent part out loud. He said, I don't really care. I'm not going to use any of this stuff. We were like, why did we get
here? Why are you here? Right. It's interesting you say that, because I am a professor and I teach a MBA students a course in business law, ethics, and social responsibility, and there's a group project in the course. So it's not a team course, but there is a group project in the course. And inevitably, every term, I get some communication about people who are not participating,
Not
right?
even showing up.
And so, and the way it's structured is that they all turn in the same assignment, right? So they all get the same grade. And I started a couple of terms ago, I use an evaluation to get feedback from the members of the team of, it's a self-assessment and an assessment of
Team.
their team and the members of the team. And then I take the evaluations for each group and look at, you know, I make some assessments. I don't, you know, whether or not they're true or not, but I take the information and make a determination on whether or not someone actually deserves the grade that the team gets. So they end up with, this is what the project is, and then I make a decision on whether or not someone deserves more, right? So I can go either way. They deserve more based on what they did, or they deserve less based on what they did. And last term, I had someone who turned in the project who everyone else said on the team said, or in the group said, that person did not participate at all. They didn't participate at all. It's like, interesting. How is it that you turn this, you know, and then I had to do some investigative work to figure out, well, how did they get the final project? And it turned out it wasn't the final project after all, right? And all of that. But you know, you're absolutely right. And I use it as a learning opportunity for them to understand, particularly as MBA students, you're going to be part of teams, right? Consulting teams where everybody's not going to pull their weight, right? And it's interesting that even as you go up the hierarchy, the 80-20 rule still seems to apply, right? Right. And so there are going to be those people who just are not going to pull their weight. And you've got to learn to navigate that. You have to learn to navigate that. So
it's very similar to something I used to, when I used to run new higher orientation at an organization that I used to work for. And I remember one of the things I would say was that, you know, how many of you work with people you just didn't get along with, you didn't like, and hands would go up, right? And then you came here for a new start, you know, you think it's going to be different. I said, that person's here, they're just wearing a different face. It's the same stuff, the same behavior. So you have to come up with a way of dealing with those people, because they're going to exist. That's why they call them free riders, because it happened enough that some scholar said, we have to give this a name.
Fortunately, we've come up with something and we've given it a name too. So we ought not make fun of people who give frameworks names, because we need that. We all need that.
Absolutely.
Right? And then the last piece, again, is a learning from every step, right? Every experience is a learning experience, and your mistakes, the missteps, they are a part of that. And so taking the time to take a look back, you could call it a postmortem, call it whatever you want, to debrief, where you're looking at what worked, what didn't work, and what you can learn from what happened from the process. And this transforms what may have been or could have been considered a mistake or a misstep into valuable lessons, right? And it feeds into the piece before that, which is creating the environment, the openness, the willingness to let creativity and innovation shine knowing that everything that's put on the table that's tested is not going to get you necessarily where you want to go. But the process of allowing that to happen allows more creativity and more innovation to be a part of what you do. And ultimately, that helps you solve the problems, right? That helps you prove that everything ultimately is figure outable.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so that's you tapping into that growth mindset, right? Again, it's all about the mindset and a fostering a sense that continuous improvement is what you want and need.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly.
All right. You have any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I think that the one thing that that came up when I was preparing for the show was that I believe that Marie Forleo says that fear is your soul's GPS. And when we think about things that we haven't figured out, but we want to do it, you have that fear that you're not going to be able to do it. That tells you that it's something important to you and that you need to start
Mhm.
engaging with it. You need to start taking those steps to make it happen for yourself, even if they are small. And I think that I'm just going to just say this real quickly and then wrap up, that when we take those small steps, we sometimes forget that we are making progress. It may be incremental and it may seem small, but over time that compounds and you'll find that you're much further along than when you first started.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. All right. And so again, the book is Everything is Figure Outable, right? It's more than a book, it's a mindset, it's a way of navigating the world that ultimately is about turning obstacles into opportunities. She shares a number of stories in there. I didn't mention this earlier, just sort of that the initial story that she's sharing about where this philosophy comes from. It comes from her mother,
Mhm.
who she grew up in a family that didn't have a lot of money. Her mother fixed everything around the house, right? So, and her mother told her, it's not that I know everything, but everything is figure outable,
Mhm.
right? And I think that's an important piece of it. You don't have to have all the answers, and you can still figure it out.
Mhm.
And it's about, and as you just said, Robert, the willingness to take action, the willingness to not let fear take over and keep you from moving forward, of taking one step. Which reminds me is people ask me often like my confidence and where the confidence comes from. The confidence comes from taking action. The confidence, it is, you don't think your way confident, right? You act your way confident, right? You take action. And as you take action, you remind yourself, I can do hard things.
Right.
I can do these things. I can figure it out. And if I'm, for most people, if they're just given a chance, right, given some time and some support, some encouragement, you will figure out. And so you can bring that to your team. So if you haven't read the book or listened to the book, I listened to it. If you haven't read or listened to it, I highly encourage you to do so. Not only will it offer you personal empowerment, some insights on personal empowerment and resilience, but it also provides invaluable lessons for leadership, and that's what we're here doing, right? I'm a huge believer, be better to lead better. And so if you improve your personal mindset, it allows you to bring that to your team. So you're better, you lead better, your team's better, ultimately your organization is better. And as leaders, fostering this mindset within ourselves and our teams can lead to a culture of creative problem solving, right? Courage in the face of uncertainty. And it's all uncertain, right? We live in and breathe in a daily environment of uncertainty and an unshakable belief that together, right, you can absolutely figure out anything. You can figure out anything. So, with that, we want to thank you for joining us for this episode of the State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. Robert, if someone wanted to get together with you and figure out something that was happening in their life and their career, how would they do that?
They can email me at inspireme@roberthilliardcoaching, or they can just go to the website, roberthilliardcoaching.com. There is a form on the website. Please fill it out. Tell me what, like I said last time, what ails you. And we can set up some time to talk about it and do a chemistry session.
Awesome. And if you want to figure some things out with me, reach out. Website shiftingintoaction.now.site, shiftingintoaction.now.site. There is a form there for you to fill out and schedule some time with me. Would absolutely love to help you figure something out. And that's whether it's in your organization or with you as an individual. So again, Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific. We look forward to seeing you next time, next Thursday. I will say this here. If you're watching this live, next Thursday is Thanksgiving. I'm not going to be here. I don't know about you, Robert, but I'm going to be somewhere probably by this time, sleep.
I'll be lounging someplace, someplace, probably looking at a tube in front of me, or as we now say, a screen.
A screen, right? Football all day or binging something. So, next Thursday is Thanksgiving. We'll be here the Thursday after. If you're watching this live, if you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe. We would love to be able to be in your world frequently, sharing about these issues. If you're watching on LinkedIn, again, that was my watch that just fell off. Sorry. If you're watching, sorry about that. If you're watching on LinkedIn, please leave a reaction, leave a comment. We would love to hear from you. If you got a topic that you would like for us to cover, please let us know. And until next time, right? If you got a challenge, figure it out. Figure it out. If you need help, reach out and take care.
Bye now.